Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a US politics extra where I'm going to talk to you a little bit about South Park. I gave you a little bit of a hint about the new South Park episode, the first one of season 27, just coming out on Paramount Plus, and that's important. The other day in a hits and losses video where I just said, right, so much is going on today, anything from like the craziness of the new South Park episode to this to that, and then it was a bit of a foreshadowing of what was going to happen. I said, I gave a bit of a warning, and lo and behold, my goodness, it has exploded onto the public information spaces, obviously onto televisions and laptops and mobile phones and whatnot, and the White House has reacted very strongly against it, and it's fascinating for a whole bunch of reasons, and I just need to offload this to you. Been swirling around in my head. First of all, let's understand what South Park is. So South Park is a comedy cartoon show that is aimed at adults but has puerile humor, and they are able to deliver all sorts of different kinds of humor because the main protagonists are children in it, and so that allows them to do really childish stuff and play around with these ideas, whilst also making huge statements, huge political statements, philosophical statements, and moral statements, and all sorts. And they attack everyone. No one is immune to the attacks of South Park. They attack the left, the right, the centre, the religious, the non-religious, everything. Everything is fair game for South Park. And what's fascinating is everyone loves South Park, or they're fine with it when it's attacking the people that you don't like. But as soon as it attacks your peeps, then, hey, you've gone too far. And what's happened with this season premiere is that lots of people on the right, the MAGA right, have said, hey, you've gone too far. There are lots of videos sort of circulating at the moment on the socials concerning, hey, how you've gone too far. It is causing quite the ruckus at the moment. Anyway, you can go and see all sorts of stuff on the socials about it. Here's an example of one that's doing the rounds, saying, hey, you went too far this time, you did. And of course they didn't. You could say that about any episode that they have ever done, because they go too far on every single subject that they pick a fight with. Famously, the chef didn't like it when the guy that played the chef, the voice of the chef, if I remember correctly, and this is just stream of consciousness, but if I remember correctly, was he not a Mormon? Let me just check. No, of course, he's a Scientologist. So, Chef was a Scientologist, and he did all these episodes, and he's happy to be involved in absolutely attacking every single, religious denomination, every single political persuasion. And then they did an episode that attacked Scientology, and he left the show. He's like, no, I can't do this. And then what they did is they spliced together loads of different instances, loads of different dialogue from all the previous shows they'd done with the chef, and they created a show that absolutely took, I think, Scientology and the chef to went to town on him and them, and it was delightful because they used all his own language to do that. Anyway, the point is that nobody is immune, right? And here in the first episode of this new season, they went to town on Trump, but not just Trump, a load of different subjects. I mean, considering it's only about, 22, 23 minutes long, it is actually jam-packed full of very astute points and criticisms. And that's worth recognizing. It's also worth noting that they had previously said, only quite recently, that they were not going to say anything about Trump. Everything has been said already about Trump, and it's, there's nothing more to say. And then, of course, Trump 2.0 is in full swing, and they're like, okay, yeah, we've got a lot to say. And they went to town. Now, they have a 6-day cycle, apparently. So they actually produce a show very, very quickly. So they can react super effectively to news that is very current. And this is clearly what they've done, because within this episode, goodness me, let's just go through it. First of all, they talk about cancel culture. They talk about the defunding of NPR and PBS. They talk about Paramount and CBS and 60 Minutes and Colbert and the cancelling of Colbert as they see it. They talk about, obviously, Trump. They talk about separation of church and state. They talk about, goodness me, they even bring into the narrative Canada and the issues between Canada and the US and Canada and Trump. It is just absolutely non-stop. What else? I think they even make a statement on how corporatism or corporate America trumps, and I'm using that in a non sort of Trump way. Corporate America trumps religion, right? Where Jesus comes down and he's like, through gritted teeth, is talking about, hey guys, Paramount own me type thing. And absolutely acerbic wit here, often incredibly puerile, but they use that puerile humor to debase people and bring them down to a kind of guttural level, but it kind of debases people of their kind of cultic status often. And I think that's really important to rehumanize people. So when you get this deification of, interestingly, they do this with Jesus in that. When you have these deified people, though, it's a way of just saying, hey, these people, these gods they're all fair game. Everyone is fair game. And if you don't like it, you shouldn't be laughing when we do it about people over here when you think it's absolutely fine to rib. So one of the main, I think, themes of the show, and it is, honestly, this is so important. This show, you have to watch it and really try and understand what they're doing here. I think they wanted to be cancelled. Like, right from the beginning of the show, there's a moment at the beginning where Cartman is speaking to Butters. Oh yeah, one of the other themes that they go through here is woke and anti-woke, and how if you become so anti-woke that you get rid of wokeism. And Cartman in this wears a "Woke is Dead" t-shirt, which is surely a riff on "God is Dead." And even when he's sitting on a park bench with Butters and they're talking, there's this kind of there are these parallels between God and woke being dead. And if you say woke is dead, what have I got to rail against? What who am I if woke is dead? Like, I'm Cartman, I'm railing against all these liberal ideas, and if you get rid of the libs, then what's my point of living? And actually, like, the right need the left in order to exist, in order to like have meaning. And there's loads of really interesting like points here that I don't know, maybe I overanalyze stuff, but like literally every 5 seconds is a like, yep, it's actually so well thought out that I guess you can be forgiven for not realizing so much of what is going on in a 20-minute episode. But actually, there is just point after point after point. And so there's a whole theme running through it about woke and anti-woke. But going back to what I was going to say, they wanted to be cancelled. Like, right at the beginning of the episode, he wakes up, Cartman wakes up, and he is basically your kid who says completely un-PC things, right? And as I say, PC and woke, political correctness and woke are a big theme in the show and in general for South Park. And Cartman is their protagonist who gets to say all the deeply inappropriate stuff. And every morning he wakes up and his favourite show is NPR, right? Which is your public broadcaster. And he loves to listen to it because you get the Jews and the liberals and the lesbians and all this kind of stuff saying things that he can just kind of riff off, and it's been cancelled, right? And then he goes in and his mum says, I'm sorry, but the president's cancelled this and that's obviously referring to Trump defunding PBS and NPR, right? And then on the bus, sitting next to Butters, he says, you can't cancel NPR. I mean, what show are they going to cancel next? And you get this beautiful little pause, and then it goes on to the next scene. That is your foreshadowing of Trump cancelling South Park. 100% is. And then during the credits at the end, Cartman and Butters are next to each other. And as the credits are coming up, like, I think it's Butters says to Cartman, I love you, man. And it's this kind of goodbye. It's this goodbye scene that's sort of quite subtle. And if you didn't realise what they're trying to do, you'd be a little bit nonplussed. But this is them goading, I think, Trump to cancel the show, to go to town on South Park. And that's their kind of goodbye episode. And what's amazing about what they did is that they riff on a lot of the backbone of this is to do with cancellation and to do with Paramount cancelling, having oversight over CBS, CBS, but also 60 Minutes and getting their oar stuck into 60 Minutes. And 60 Minutes then being compromised, which we know about previously. And you had the producer, or was it the producer, or was it the anchor of 60 Minutes then quitting over this? I think it's the anchor, because they weren't allowed to do this and that. And then the legal challenge by Trump of the 60 Minutes interview of Kamala Harris, so on and so forth. So that is in the crosshairs of South Park here. And they take the mickey out of Colbert being, as they see it, cancelled by Paramount. I've changed my mind on actually what Paramount were doing there, but I understand that you could easily think that Paramount's cancelling Colbert on account of his political criticism of Trump. Now, you need to understand that, I'm sure I've got it here somewhere, here it is, that South Park had literally just signed a deal with Paramount. So Paramount own South Park. They signed a $1.5 billion streaming deal that would secure another 50 episodes, I believe, and have their entire back catalogue of South Park run on Paramount Plus. And then literally, like, when's this? July the 21st, right? So we are... I guess the episode came out on 25th. In the UK, it came out on the 25th. 26th. It came out this morning. I watched it at midnight this morning, right? In US, it came out yesterday, right? So just a few days after signing a $1.5 billion dollar deal, they excoriate Paramount. They absolutely go to town on Paramount for doing what they've done and for this deal with Sundance and compromising, and also being sued by Trump. So another theme that's in here is that Trump sues everyone. He sues South Park as a town in this episode. And you have in this episode the South Park, the town, then running public service announcements in a deal that they do with Donald Trump. They run public service announcements, and this is a bit that is the most controversial. I mean, there's so many controversial bits in this, but it's mainly to do with Trump's genitalia being very small, and the idea that, hey, he's only got a teeny weeny wiener, but he's got a great love for the country or whatever. And that's their public service announcement, where he's naked. This big fat Trump is an AI generated video, has a big fat Trump lying in the desert, and then his genitalia popping up unblurred. And there's a big argument with this. I think I've got it here, where so South Park Variety reports that South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone battled Comedy Central over showing Trump's genitals, and they refuse to blur it. And they do refuse to blur it, and it is so much better for it. It sounds kind of puerile, but there's they want to offend Trump here, right? And they have his kind of genitalia, unclean genitalia, should we say, just popping up and speaking. And it's really debasing of Trump, obviously, and that's what they're trying to do. And they're goading Trump to cancel the show. And of course, Trump is then, it is beautifully done, because Trump is in a dilemma now. If he cancels the show, which he clearly would want to do, then the right cancel. And I don't think South Park is the left, because they attack everyone. But it would be an attack on freedom of speech, and you would get censorship, and you would get cancel culture at the very heart of the Trump administration. And they know if they do that, they would be utterly hypocritical, because they've spent so long denigrating the left for being at the forefront of cancel culture. So this is so well done. It's like they're literally announcing to Trump, cancel us, cancel us, cancel us. They foreshadow at the beginning of the episode, and they give the goodbyes at the end of the episode. And they're just waiting for the White House to go to town on them. Now, the White House has gone to town on them. All right, Rolling Stone has an article, Trump White House rages over South Park episode, calls the show fourth rate. I was listening to an analysis where they're like, we've spoken to loads of people in the White House, and they're like, yep, we've all shared clips of it. It has gone viral around the White House. So you know that this has hit home perfectly. This is like, pun not intended but intended, this is a chef's kiss of an episode, because it does so much with so little, and it hits home so acutely with Trump and the White House. You've had the creators come out and give a sort of fake apology. They've been at I think some kind of Comic-Con where they kind of say, oh, we're terribly sorry, when you know that absolutely not. That's Trey Parker and Matt Stone. This is after the White House spokesperson Taylor Rogers said this show hasn't been relevant for over 20 years and is hanging on by a thread with uninspired ideas in a desperate attempt for attention. President Trump has delivered on more promises in just 6 months than any other president in our country's history, and no fourth-rate show can derail President Trump's hot streak. And of course, if it is just hanging on by a thread, then why have Paramount just paid $1.5 billion for the rights to it? So it's genius in terms of, like, I've watched the first South Park episode. I mean, this show's been going since 1997, right? So it's almost 30 years old. And I haven't watched it since the early days, to be honest. I've too much on my plate. It's not just don't have time. But I specifically went to watch this episode. So it did exactly what it is intending to do, which is get people watching it. It's clickbait, but it's not clickbait, because what you get is what it promises. So it's not deluding you. It is giving you exactly what it says it's going to give you, and it is on point with everything it says, and it is clever. Yes, it's puerile. Yes, it's over the top with the immaturity of it, but in what it says, it absolutely hits home. It is delightful, and that is why the internet has caught a light with this episode. It has gone to town on this episode, and rightfully so. There is a lot in it. I just want to, the main point of me having this video is to talk about the cancel culture element of it, whereby they are goading Trump to do that, and the dilemma that he is now faced with. I don't think he will cancel it. I don't think he will take it to court or do anything like that. But one of the big themes, as I've said in the episode, is Trump taking everyone frivolously to court. And they are saying, come on, take us to court and cancel us. Do it. We're here for it. And if he does, then they win. And if he doesn't, they win. That's the genius of it. It's brilliant. Now, although this isn't particularly to do with this episode, although it is. They talk about this. They talk about Stephen Colbert very quickly through gritted teeth. Jesus talks to South Park and saying, eat your bread, come on, you got to do this, you got to do what Paramount want, blah, blah, blah. Haven't you heard what's happened to Colbert? And the idea is that Paramount cancelled Colbert. I did a whole video on this, about the media being beholden to Trump and these frivolous lawsuits that are settled out of court, and Paramount settled out of court with Trump because of the CBS 60 Minutes interview and the editing of it, which is absolutely normal. But he took them to court. They gave him $16 million, and they gave him somewhere between $25 and $35 million worth of public service announcements. In other words, positive PR CBS is going to run for Trump, and South Park play on that completely in the episode. But this idea of Colbert being cancelled because he criticized Trump, actually, I really, really advise you. I'll try and include this link in the. I will include this link in the sources in the description below. Go to Steve Galloway. It's Steve, isn't it? And Jessica Tarlov here, or Scott Galloway. I knew it was Steve. Scott Galloway and Jessica Tarlov on Scott Galloway's podcast, where he does once a week Raging Moderates, which is, he says, look, I'm a moderate. Jessica Tarlov, even though she's a liberal on Fox News, she's actually kind of fairly moderate. We're going to talk moderate politics. And they have a whole section at the end of this video on Stephen Colbert and the economics involved, the finances involved in running a late night TV show that costs an absolute arm and a leg. Right, so the Stephen Colbert show costs phenomenal amounts of money. It loses something like $40 million a year, which is massive. It's got a workforce of something like 200 people plus or something like that. And if Skydance, are going to merge with CBS, then Skydance are going to say, right, that's making a loss. You need to sort that out before we merge, because we're not going to take that loss-making thing on. Then you have arguments back against that, which I think are sound, actually. So late night TV is dying. And there's a fascinating conversation about being able to make really low-cost television or output content. And do you know what? Look at me. I've got some crappy office that's decked out with a load of shite, and I've got 55,000 subscribers. Okay, whoopee-doo, that's not that much. But the point is, you look at Hot Wings, you look at Theo Von, you look at Joe Rogan. You've got low-cost output content provision that are getting more views than mainstream media. The future of very expensive mainstream live television is on shaky ground, very thin ice. And there's a fascinating conversation here between Galloway and Jessica Tarlov. I'd love to play for you, but it would just be me playing like 20 minutes of analysis for you, where they look at the finances involved in this. So I think Stephen Colbert was cancelled because of a straw that broke the camel's back, and the straw may well have been political cancellation there, because he criticised Trump, and Trump has even said he might have had something to do with it. And then there have been other commenters who refused to answer direct questions about whether Colbert was cancelled. The official line was it's a financial decision. I think it predominantly was a financial decision that was using a fortuitous moment to be able to cancel Colbert because of some outright criticism of both Paramount and Trump. So he had criticized Paramount for settling out of court so that they could merge with Skydance. Paramount then, or CBS, owned by Paramount, then cancelled Colbert. But it was a loss-making show. However, there's an argument against doing that from Jessica Tarlov, who actually agrees with Scott Galloway and says, yeah, I think it was a financial decision. But you need to look at a TV channel as a whole. So if you're screwing over CBS, which is a flagship show, and you're cancelling Late Night with Stephen Colbert, which is a flagship show, and you're just totally concerned about what makes money, then you are going to get rid of your variety. So when you go into a supermarket, this is how I would see it, and you smell bread. So they bring you in with the smell of bread, but the bread is cheap, right? And okay, it's probably the wrong way of seeing it. So you go to the supermarket because the bread is cheap, and it's your loss leader, right? I'm in there because I can get like a 50p loaf of bread. So you buy the loaf of bread. Oh, while I'm in here, I'm going to buy everything else. So your loss leader is subsidized by selling everything else, but you go in there because of the loss leader. So Stephen Colbert might lose money, but you go to CBS and you stick around because of Stephen Colbert. So, if you start getting rid of all these kind of loss leaders, then what are you left with? Where's your variety? And anyway, so there's an interesting aspect to that. But I think there is an argument. Actually, I've changed my mind on this. That it does make sense to get rid of Colbert on account of it being a very expensive show, and the viewing habits of the world have changed. And actually, TV stations must be at crisis points now, where we watch things on demand when we want to watch them, not when it's dictated to us by, a show being live. And nowadays with these late night TV shows, really, most people are watching them in 2-minute clips of the highlights on YouTube. And, is YouTube the platform, all these different podcasts and vlogcasts and whatever, vodcasts, are these the future rather than very expensive television? Anyway, that's a totally separate discussion, really, to South Park. However, that South Park episode is well worth watching to get an understanding of why Trump's going to be so annoyed with it. But with that puerile, here's an overweight man with a very small pecker being ridiculed for exactly that. But along with that, that's your loss leader. Along with that, it's jam-packed full of all this juicy content that hits the mark, that is very astute and very acute. And well worth watching for that. And for just delighting in how Trump and the White House must be dithering over what to do about it. Because you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. And I think Matt Parker and Trey Stone knew that. They absolutely knew that. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Did I say Trey Parker, Matt Stone? Anyway, I get them wrong way around. It's late. I'm not very well. And I would just suggest you go and watch Satan in Bed with Trump, where Trump is the new Saddam Hussein, if you know your South Park. And it is an absolute delight, but there's an awful lot to discuss around it for sure. Take care. Speak to you soon.